Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Certainly glad to have Marty Kemp, the First Lady, traveling with me today, holding us accountable, I'm sure of that. Also wanted to just mention the rest of our traveling party today. We got our Insurance Commissioner, General John King, DNR Commissioner Mark Williams, and Emergency Management, Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Director Homer Bryson. I also want to thank Congressman Buddy Carter for being with me today as well while I've been working throughout his district. Certainly the local legislative delegation who is serving you so well in the Georgia General Assembly, and I know there's countless local elected officials, EMA directors, other first responders, and a lot of community leaders here. So we really appreciate you all coming out to visit with us and give us an update on what you're seeing on the ground at the local level. And we want to share a little bit about what we've been doing as well. First of all, I just want to thank especially all these folks in the room here for all your hard work and preparation, and others at the local level that aren't with us that have just been doing a great job getting prepared, also giving us feedback and having good communications with us. As you know, there's no secrets on the latest projections, but Hurricane Dorian is headed for Georgia's coastline. The cone of the storm continues to encompass our coast. And as you know, this trajectory has changed several times and even now remains very uncertain, so we are continuing to watch it very closely. However, we have got to take action now to mitigate harm and ensure the safety of our citizens as well as the visitors that we have coming from multiple places into our state. And certainly this is a massive storm, Category 5 hurricane. It is shattering all-time records for hurricanes in the Atlantic. Sustained winds of 185 miles an hour yesterday afternoon. The storm has risen to the top of the charts as one of the most powerful ever in the Atlantic. It's currently the strongest storm on record to occur east of Florida in the Atlantic. And once it reaches our coast, it's expected to remain immensely powerful with strong winds ranging from 40 to 60 miles an hour. It's also going to bring a really tough storm surge for us down here. I know right now we're experiencing high tides because of the moon phase that we're in, and we're predicting 3 to 6 feet of storm surge along the coast and heavy rainfall of 4 to 6 inches, which may cause flash flooding. I just heard on the radio when the storm came out across the Bahamas that it dumped 30 inches of rain very quickly. And based on the recommendations of the federal, state, and local partners, last Thursday I issued an executive order declaring a state of emergency in 12 coastal counties for this hurricane for the preparation, response, and recovery that we have going on and things to do in the future. And to ensure an uninterrupted supply of petroleum products, emergency supplies, food, etc., I've also temporarily waived specific weight, height, and length restrictions for vehicles traveling through Georgia for disaster response. I've also suspended regulations which limit the hours of operation for commercial vehicle drivers. I believe that all of these measures will greatly assist with the ongoing storm prep and disaster response efforts. But as you all know, we still have work to do. Throughout this process, my administration has remained in very close contact with the White House and President Trump, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster, and also been in contact with Governor Roy Cooper in North Carolina, as well as many other agencies and secretary-level positions in the federal government, not to mention our local partners that we've been talking to several times a day. We are committed to the safety of our people in this state, and as a result, yesterday evening I've issued an executive order requiring the mandatory evacuation of individuals east of I-95 in 6 counties: Bryan, Chatham, Camden, Glynn, Liberty, and McIntosh. That started at noon today. To aid in the traffic flow for the evacuation, Georgia Emergency Management Agency and Georgia Department of Transportation will also start westerly contraflow on I-16 starting at 8 a.m. tomorrow. All I-16 lanes would allow for westbound traffic only from Savannah to US 441 in Dublin. In addition, the State Operations Center is working with the Red Cross to open shelters for evacuees in McDuffie, Lawrence, Bibb, Coffee, and Ware counties today. Information on shelter locations and opening times, in addition to available hotel accommodations, can be found at gema.ga.gov. Through daily briefings, GEMA and state partners have been in ongoing communication with local county emergency management agencies as well as FEMA officials. They have deployed field staff to all the coastal counties to support local operations and maintain strong coordination between local and state officials. Already, we've worked hard to identify and put on standby all necessary resources for response and recovery. These efforts include having law enforcement and transportation agencies on alert for evacuation and post-storm response, stockpiling fuel for first responders and emergency power operations, and compiling other similar resources. Even with all this preparation, we still cannot stress enough that Hurricane Dorian remains a significant threat to our state. We strongly urge all residents to stay vigilant and track its path and continue to evaluate the potential impacts on themselves and their families. At noon, mandatory evacuation went into effect for those counties, as I mentioned, east of I-95, including Glynn. I want to continue to stress to people how important it is to heed these warnings. Given the risk of strong winds and potential flooding in these areas, if you decide not to evacuate, I want to be clear, you will be on your own if first responders are unable to reach you. And we certainly have the threat of that, especially with flooding on potential causeways and other roadways. Please don't take this risk if you're able to evacuate. In the coming days, we'll keep monitoring ongoing evacuation efforts here in Georgia and from Florida and South Carolina as well. Obviously, we are doing all that we can to avoid a gridlock traffic situation and move people to safer areas as quickly as we can. Our infrastructure and roadways need to stay as clear as possible, but also keep traffic moving, and that is what we are focused on. And now, before I turn it over, I want to take some time to again thank everyone at the local level who's working so hard to get us storm ready. I want to also again thank President Trump and his administration for their unbelievable commitment and their communication with us. Late yesterday evening, we received approval from the President for a federal emergency declaration ahead of Dorian's landfall to fully leverage federal resources, including critical assistance for water, food, and medical supplies, shelter support, debris removal, and public health services in the aftermath of this storm. Right before the event, we also held a roundtable discussion at the Port of Savannah to discuss what they're doing to prepare. I know that at that briefing, I was told also about the measures that have been taken in Brunswick. Certainly have learned a lot at the Brunswick port from past storms, and I think that will make us be better prepared in this area than we ever have been from a port perspective. I'm deeply grateful for the federal, state, and local agencies, law enforcement, our military, volunteers, private sector companies, and nonprofits, and countless others that have been working around the clock to prepare for Dorian. Thank you for all that you do. I now want to turn it over to GEMA Director Homer Bryson. Homer.
Thank you, Governor. I think it's important for everyone to know that the Governor's been very proactive in his approach to managing this storm, with the emphasis being on public safety. He issued a state of emergency well in advance of the storm to allow the state the time to rally resources to be positioned to support the local governments as needed. We've already identified and have over 1,500 state employees prepared to deploy to assist with you in your local issues. We have worked multiple times a day on communicating with the coastal counties to ensure that we're in lockstep with what your needs are, what we can do to assist those needs, and to ensure that we're messaging to our citizens the same message about the seriousness of this storm and what action they need to take. Again, the governor being proactive, he mentioned it, asking for the a federal declaration, which we received yesterday. The value to that is that frees up FEMA to provide support to the state and the locals for emergency protective measures, and that's a proactive step, and we want to thank the governor for that. And I'll turn the podium over to the Georgia Insurance Commissioner, John King.
Good afternoon. My name is John King. I'm your insurance commissioner. As we are focused completely on the response to this incredible large storm, we're also focused on the recovery effort, even though we don't yet know what the damage assessments are going to be. So we're rallying not only industry insurance companies that as soon as the routes are open, we can start bringing teams in to help assist people getting back on their feet. This is an incredibly resilient community. I've been coming down here in one way or another for over 20 years, and so I know what the grit that you all bring to this, and we all stand with you. Thank you. Governor.
All right, thank you, General and Homer, for that. Do we got anybody questions for anybody? Yes, sir.
Mr. Governor, for many people in this area, this will be their third time evacuating in 4 years. A lot of them have just decided they're not going this time. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I would tell them there's no reason to start that trend now of not moving. This storm is bigger than any we've seen. We don't know the path yet. I mean, the models are showing one thing, but it's moved a lot in the last few days. I mean, last week we would have thought the storm had already hit Florida by now, and it still hasn't made landfall. So I would urge people to take our advice. If they don't, you know, it may be hard for us to get to them if something bad happens. But look, we respect people's willingness to do what they want with their home and their property, but I think it's prudent to protect their families, to get their belongings together. As General King has said before, make sure you know where your insurance papers are, your valuables, take those with you, and move in an orderly fashion. The storm is very slow moving, so folks have some time to start gathering their things and get on the road either tonight or first thing in the morning. I just would urge them to do that. I hope this storm takes a hard right-hand turn and goes out to sea, but if it does not, if it straightens out, or if it some reason starts moving back to the west, we're going to have a real issue here, and we're going to have it anyway with flooding and high winds and beach erosion.
Governor, speaking of beach erosion, I do know that pretty much all of Georgia's beaches could see significant erosion. What's the plan afterwards to try to work with that?
Well, we're worried about the plan afterwards. I know right now we're focused on life and safety issues, traffic issues, so we can move our people and keep them safe. You know, it's hard to assess something that hasn't happened yet. You know, the point's been made. Our citizens are weary of storms, and I get that. We've been through a lot of them. You know, it wouldn't have mattered where Dorian would have went. It was going to hit an area that's been affected recently, whether it was, you know, here, whether it was up in Savannah, or whether it crossed over and went in the Gulf and went into southwest Georgia. And we understand that. But we also know we got a job to do, and that's to keep our folks safe. And we want people to heed the advice that we're giving them. I mean, we've been very, very thoughtful about these issues. We've been in, you know, detailed conversations. I mean, I was at the operations center yesterday for over 2 hours, talking with the president, talking with Governor DeSantis, McMaster's, and others. This is a big storm, maybe as big as we've ever seen. So I would urge people to, you know, prepare, listen to the advice that we're giving them and the directive, and then we'll deal with. We're prepared to deal with whatever comes our way. I'll tell you, we got a great team at the local and the state level and with our federal partners. I know that we're ready. Commissioner Williams with the Department of Natural Resources was just mentioning he's got, you know, debris removal crews already stood up, ready to go. Same thing for the Guard. They're ready to roll. All we got to do is give them the directive. I mean, we're sitting on point. We just got to figure out where this storm's going and what the impact's going to be.
What extra resources are being given to those who are either disabled and or cannot afford to evacuate?
I may let Homer speak to that. I know we got a little bit of a briefing from our Department of Public Health officials yesterday at the SOC. He commented to me that that's the hardest working group they had in the room because they're having to move a lot earlier than everyone else, and I'll let Homer speak to that.
We've spent a lot of time over the last several days working with the coastal counties regarding the vulnerable populations in those counties, and we've already brought in a number of resources, ambulances, buses, to help begin the movement of those out of the counties. If you have an individual, just for financial reasons, that they have issues with moving, if you will work that through your local emergency management office, we'll look to the Red Cross, Salvation Army, and other nonprofits to assist those folks with those issues.
Anybody else? All right, well, listen, thank you guys for what you're doing. Be safe. We'll be in constant communication. We will be continuing to put out information on our social media platforms so that we're letting you all and the local media and others know exactly, you know, what we know when we get it. And be safe out there. God bless you.
Thank you, Governor.
Hey, thank you, Commissioner.
Out to sea.